This character is spicy. Considering the spotlight she had in 1.1's main story quest, it's no surprise that many people are very much looking forward to her release. I can think of at least two, and probably more, amazing reasons for why someone would want to pull for Changli. Doing all the preparation to immediately max out her level and light up her skill tree is something that takes days, if not weeks, worth of wayplates to farm. Building a character from the ground up with no pre-farming can be a sluggish experience. You wouldn't want to make that mistake with Changli's best teammates, would you? We had the special privilege of previewing Changli's entire kit from her brief trial in the version 1.1 main story. While we won't be going into a deep dive of her mechanics, we will be focusing on one element in particular, her outro skill. Changli's outro skill is incredibly powerful and very similar to Yin Lin's, boosting fusion damage by 20% and resonance liberation damage by 25%. It's a very powerful ability that you definitely want to make use of. But how? Our discussion today is focused on two characters that will likely take spots as Changli's best teammates, Encore and Chixia. Both of these characters are fusion attribute damage dealers who can take advantage of Changli's substantial buffs to varying degrees of effectiveness. We'll be covering how they synergize with Changli, how you might use them across her teams, and their recommended echoes. By the end of this video, you might find that one of these characters is a lot more suited to Changli than the other. The first character we'll be breaking down synergies with is the one that every single player is guaranteed to own, Chixia. Every player received at least one copy of her from completing the first 10 minutes of the game. Chixia primarily is a damage dealer that inflicts most of her damage through her resonance skill and resonance liberation. A heavy focus of her gameplay is generating her forte bar through either her intro skill or basic attacks to expend that forte bar through holding down her resonance skill. This has an initial cap of 60 stacks. Holding down Chixia's resonance skill has her rapidly shoot at a single target as she consumes that forte bar. Once she reaches the tick mark, or 30 stacks, she can release her resonance skill for a highly powered shot that also deals resonance skill damage. Consuming more charges beyond the tick mark doesn't add any additional damage, and dodging while charging will unfortunately cancel the attack. At a higher sequence node level, this shot will automatically crit regardless of her stats. A short press on her resonance skill deals low damage, dashes, and generates her forte bar. She's got two charges of this ability. Chixia's resonance liberation, on the other hand, deals a massive amount of damage in an AoE, and at higher sequence node levels, will regenerate a huge portion of her forte bar. Chixia's inherent skills heavily buff her held resonance skill, granting her up to 30% attack if she consumes half her forte bar, and increases her maximum stacks from 60 to 70, while increasing the damage of the final shot by 50%. What this all means is that Chixia can play in two ways. A main DPS who uses a large amount of field time to fully expend all of her charges with two fully charged resonance skills, or a burst sub DPS that uses one charged resonance skill to grant her buffs, and then casts her resonance liberation to burst the enemy, following up with another held resonance skill and basic attacks to generate concerto energy, until she can swap out and activate her outro skill. When paired with Changli, you'll want to opt for the second playstyle, with Changli's outro skill heavily buffing her damage and Chixia's intro skill granting her forte. Chixia can have some great rotations in her team comps that deal a mix of single target and AoE damage. A fantastic budget choice for Changli. Now that we've taken a look at the highlights of Chixia's kit, it's time for us to move on to Encore. As a standard 5-star, there are many ways a player could have acquired her. What's for certain though is that Encore is one of the strongest standard characters. Encore has a very unique kit that focuses primarily on her resonance liberation and the massive damage increase it provides across her entire kit. Encore's baseline abilities are actually at a significant range. Not as far as Chixia's, but still much further than melee characters. Her resonance skill is a two-part cast with a long initial cast animation that can be followed up with a second cast. Encore's forte bar can be activated when it's completely filled, and replaces her heavy attack with an extremely delayed nuke that can take several seconds to detonate. During this channel, she gains 70% damage reduction, but can also be swapped off. She generates her forte bar through all of her offensive abilities and her intro skill. This forte ability does entirely resonance liberation damage. When Encore activates her Resonance Liberation, she gains an entirely new moveset across her basic attacks, Resonance Skill, and Forte bar. Her basic attacks become much more agile with additional iframes, but lose the ability to parry. Her Resonance Skill becomes a very fast cast, long-range ability that has a much lower base cooldown. Activating her Resonance Liberation resets the cooldown on that skill. Her Forte bar functions identically but simply deals more damage. All of these enhanced abilities retain their original damage source, meaning that those enhanced basics do basic attack damage. Same with the skill, and the enhanced Forte still does Resonance Liberation damage. What this means is that Encore can still benefit from Changli's full outro skill because of the fact that her Forte bar counts as Resonance Liberation damage. The only caveat to this is the fact that you don't actually want to swap cancel Encore's Forte when Changli is on the team, as you'll lose her outro skill buff and heavily reduce the damage of that signature nuke in the process. When it comes to Encore's inherent skills, they increase the damage of her burst mode by 10% when she's above 70% HP, and grants her a fusion damage boost when using any of her resonant skills. What this means is that playing Encore optimally in Changli's team could be difficult. You'll want to keep her above 70% HP while having no support outro skill like Verena or Baija's healing her, as she'll want to be the recipient of Changli's outro skill buff and likely won't receive any healing from her team without losing that buff. With how long some of her animations are, it can be difficult. A workaround is pairing her with a shielder like Tao Chi or Jian Xin with Changli to ensure that there's some form of sustain left for Encore when she takes the field. Now that we've covered these two character kits and playstyles with Changli, you'll likely be wondering what Echo loadouts make the most sense. Molten Rift is the first choice that comes to mind given its incredible boosts to fusion damage and very reliable activation condition of using a resonance skill. Both of these characters actively promote resonance skills across their playstyle to generate some great personal buffs. The only caveat here is that this set purely gives a damage bonus. Changli grants significant damage bonuses herself, and Encore and Chixia both have a 20% fusion damage bonus inherent on their skill trees. Considering the diminishing returns to damage stats as you go higher and higher on one end, some players may also want to consider running Lingering Tunes as their set on these characters. This set grants a stacking attack buff over time and a massive increase to outro skill damage. Both of these characters greatly benefit from stacking this buff, as their kits center around getting a sizable amount of field time that should always end with their outro skill. The incredibly fast cast time of the Mech Abomination Echo also helps in streamlining their rotations. I recommend Lingering Tunes over Molten Rift for a few reasons. Changli is likely going to use Molten Rift herself. Farming for the 4 on-set Elemental 3 costs instead of just 2 is likely going to be a huge struggle. Second, Lingering Tunes is a lot more flexible on its 4 cost and 1 cost, as you'll 100% be able to use it for other characters. Third is that Lingering Tunes is just a lot easier to farm, with how many 3 costs drop the set. You can also save 3 costs of other elements for other characters in the future. When it comes to your Echo main stats and substats, both characters will be looking for a similar blend of attack 1 costs, fusion damage 3 costs, and a crit damage or crit rate 4 cost with a crit rate of over 60% at the end. Both of these characters have no crit stats in their skill upgrades, which can make their Echo sets a bit difficult to optimize. Even though Chixia's S1 does guarantee crits, she likely won't have the field time to make her Forte enhanced resonance skill multiple times, and her resonance liberation enhanced by Changli's outro skill won't benefit from this interaction. With this information, you should be set up and ready to go to farm for one of Changli's optimal teammates. While both of these characters provide high damage, they have their own bits of clunkiness in their kit, like Chixia's dodge canceling on her resonance skill or the large delays on Encore's base resonance skill and Forte bar. I'd leave it up to you on whose playstyle you mesh better with, as Chixia can safely attack enemies from range, while Encore gets a bit more closer and personal. With that, best of luck on your upcoming Changli pulls, and peace out.